Hey guys, Riverick here, bringing you a new series we're starting called How To. The goal of this series is to give you my take on how to play a champion. From the fundamentals like runes, masteries, item builds, and how to define your role in game, to the more detailed and complex aspects of the current champion I'm talking about, like mechanics, how to land skill shots with a better success rate, and the min-max aspects of said champion, and many more things. So let's jump into it, starting with one of the simpler champions of the game, Rammus. Rammus uses a fairly standard rune page. Ideally, you would want 9 attack damage marks, 9 flat armor seals, 9 flat magic resist glyphs, and 3 attack speed quintessences. There isn't very many viable variations in rune pages for Rammus. Switching one attack speed quintessence for one flat armor quintessence is being the most common. This gives him better ganking survivability versus AD lanes, but a slightly slower first clear. Consider taking this if the enemy team is heavily attack damage based. If not, stick to the standard rune page for your best bet. Onto Masteries. Rammus goes 6-6-18, with Fury and Exposed Weakness in the Ferocity tree for the attack speed to help his clear, and the 3% bonus damage to targets he hits to allow his allies to really give him the business. Savagery and Runic Affinity in the Cunning tree, again helping his clear speed a little, with the extra time on buffs to help his ganks and sustain inside the jungle, since Rammus tends to go low early on in both mana and HP because of his requirement of getting hit to deal most of his damage. And finally, onto the Resolve tree. You take Unyielding. Since you build so many resistances, Rammus really makes great use of the percentage bonus armor and magic resist a lot more than the little bit of extra regen in the early game. Tough Skin to help you survive the early levels in the jungle a bit better. Runic Armor to make your Courage of the Colossus just that much bigger and all the regen from your defensive items scale better into the late game. Insight, since the later the game goes, the more reliant on flash you are for ganks and initiation. And from when you get flash trades with the ADC or solo laners that don't take Insight, you know yours will be back up sooner, allowing you to really punish them if they ever slightly overextend. Swiftness, because of tenacity and slow resistance, helps you a lot more than a bit of flat armor or magic resistance. Since you are already dipping pretty far into defensive stats, diminishing returns will make it so that the value of flat armor and MOR is greatly lessened. And of course, Courage of the Colossus, as both your Q and E proc it extremely easily and reliably. And being a main initiator, that massive shield helps you survive a great deal more than either of the other two keystones. Next up, let's talk about Rammus' passive and abilities. His passive, Spike Shell, is pretty straightforward. Rammus permanently has bonus attack damage equal to 25% of his armor, meaning he scales more off armor than any other stat. So build more armor, gain more attack damage. Up next is Rammus' Q, Powerball. Rammus tucks into a ball and begins to roll for up to 7 seconds, losing the ability to use basic attacks or use Puncturing Taunt, but amplifying his movement speed by an additional 20% each second, up to a maximum 140% increase. Upon colliding with an enemy, Rammus knocks back all nearby enemies, dealing magic damage and slowing them for 2 seconds afterwards, also ending Powerball in the process. This is Rammus' main initiation tool, along with Puncturing Taunt. Without Powerball, ganks are nearly impossible since it's so easy to kite away from Rammus. Be very aware that minions and jungle monsters can get in the way and end your Powerball early. Often, when ganking a lane filled with minions, it's better to go around them since you are moving so fast than to try and force your way through them, risking ending Powerball early. Or when running away, enemies will use their leaps and dashes to get in your way to stop you from gaining movement speed bonus. But in a teamfight, Powerball can be a surefire way to proc Courage of the Colossus, since all you need to do is bump into an enemy champion. You can also flash without cancelling Powerball, which is one of the best ways to initiate onto a high priority target later in the game. Rammus' W, Defensive Ball Curl, is your Stop Hitting Yourself, Can't Kill Me button. Rammus drops into a defensive stance for 6 seconds, gaining bonus armor and magic resistance, as well as dealing magic damage to enemies whenever they use basic attacks against them. This is your best ability when it comes to clearing camps, and is what allows Rammus to dive towers very early on, with a massive 120 armor gain at max rank of the ability. And why stacking armor works really well without buying many magic resistance items, since he gains 10% of his armor in magic resist whenever it's active. This ability, with Thornmail, makes you a nightmare for any AD carry that refuses to get a decent amount of lifesteal, and to any other basic attack reliant champions like Jax, Master Yi, and Irelia. And don't forget, since you gain armor during its duration, because of your passive, you will also gain bonus attack damage, letting you hit just a bit harder. Now we have Rammus's bread and butter, his E, Puncturing Taunt. Rammus taunts the target enemy and reduces their armor. With a 2.25 second duration at max rank and being an easy to land point and click, this is Rammus's scariest ability, as it's one of the longest lasting hard CCs in the game, and the armor reduction in combination with a strong AD laner can make for a quick takedown of the enemy, especially in the early levels. Don't be afraid to use it in the jungle when you have a blue buff, or when you are really sure you won't be using it for a gank anytime soon, as the armor reduction can save you a few vital seconds during his clears. This is also the easiest way to proc Courage the Colossus, as long as you get in range. Just point and click. Last but not least is Rammus's ultimate, Tremors. This ability is fairly straightforward. Upon activation, a small circle will form around Rammus and will start dealing magic damage for 8 seconds, with 1 second intervals. The neat thing about this ability is that it will also hit structures like turrets and inhibitors. Its low cooldown makes it a great tool for getting that little bit of extra damage you need to kill an opponent or to quickly finish off a tower. On to items. Rammus's item build is fairly standard, with the biggest thing to take into consideration is what boots you want to run. Personally, I like boots and mobility, using the speed to really take over a game, but they require a bit more game knowledge and execution than the others for the full advantage. Whilst Ninja Tabi are his best scaling boots, and should nearly always be taken when the enemy is running 3 or more AD champions. Merc Treads is a great choice when the enemy has loads of CC, or magic damage. Rule of thumb is if they have at least 1 hard CC on at least 3 champions excluding knockups, or at least 3 medium to high magic damage dealing champions, take Merc Treads. And finally, Boots of Swiftness. These boots have a great niche for Rammus. They have the highest movement speed out of any of the boots besides out of combat mobility boots, so you have a positioning edge in fights. They are also great versus teams that have lots of slows but little hard CC, so you can make better use of your Powerball. For his core items, you will almost always want to take Thornmail and Dead Man's Plate, as these two are the best synergistic items for Rammus. And if you're top lane, replace Cinderholt with Sunfire Cape. The other 2 items should be filled with whatever you need to survive the situation. In the picture below, you will see a few good examples for items to build. Renan's Owen being a great item versus teams that have 2 or more crit building champions, and Guardian Angel for making an extra impact in that one big endgame team fight. Banshee's Veil and Locket being great anti-mage, anti-burst choices. Frozen Heart versus teams with high attack speed. Zerat Portal for those drawn-out siege matches where you need some extra pressure in another lane, or for when your Guardian Angel's on cooldown. And Leandra's Torment being a great offensive choice, as it's going to help you melt down those pesky tanks. Remember, there is no 100% full build. It's always going to keep changing, so make your choices to the best of your ability, game by game. Now let's talk about Rammus's overall role in a game. While he may be a tank, he has a very big choice to make. He can either play the more peeling off role, where he's taunting and stopping and making sure that the enemy assassin and bruiser can't kill his damage dealers, or he can play the more initiation role, where he tries to kill and stop the enemy damage dealers. He's not a very good mage killer, but he is a fantastic AD carry killer. If you're ever able to taunt an AD carry, you can pretty much guarantee they're going to die. For teamfighting, Rammus much prefers a nice wide open area, away from lane creeps. Because he really wants to get a flank, this allows him to be able to do that without having to fear of some random enemy minion getting in the way and stopping his Powerball dead short. And if you're able to do so, as mentioned before, you should almost always go for the enemy AD carry or another high damage threat, locking them down so your team's able to follow up and remove them from the fight, which usually wins you the fight straight through. While you may not have the power of a Lee Sin or Elise, your ganking is always relevant. Don't be afraid to go for those early flash plays with a Q so you get the slow and then into a taunt to lock down the enemy so you can guarantee those kills for your laners, as the extra goal will make a huge difference whether you're tanky enough in the mid game for those team fights and if your laners have enough power to actually make use of your tankiness. And finally, objective control. While Rammus may not have the pushing power or clear speed of a Shyvana or Jax, or the executes of a Lee Sin or Elise to really guarantee that Baron or Dragon secure, he does have one huge advantage, his tankiness. He's able to tank out the Baron or Dragon for an extended period of time and still be in a healthy spot for the teamfight that's sure to ensue right after. When it comes to towers, don't be afraid of looking like a dummy and just walking up to them. You're so tanky, you're really not going to take that much damage, and you'll give your team all the space in the world they need to chip them down. And that's all I have to say about our friendly Armadillo. I hope this guide helps you out on the Summoner's Rift. If you have any questions, feel free to post them below or on one of our social media pages, and I'll be sure to get back to you as fast as I can. If you'd like to see more videos like this, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. Leave any feedback on the video you'd like as well. I promise I'll do my best to make them better in every aspect possible. Hope you enjoyed and have a great time killing it with the Armadillo King.